that our country responded. And then on top of that, people have lost their jobs, or they're afraid
Mhm.
they're going to lose their jobs, and they've lost loved ones, or they've gotten sick. I think it just was sort of the perfect storm
Storm.
for things to explode. You know, people are like, well, how can you go outside? You might catch a virus. I was like, I think for a lot of people, particularly Black people, they're like, what the hell I'm worried about this virus for? Well, you know, I could catch a bullet from a cop's gun anytime I walk out of the house, right? There's two pandemics that we're in right now. There's
Right.
the pandemic of COVID-19, and there's the pandemic of police terror. And so I think you're seeing those things meet and explode in a particular kind of way.
Yeah. Thank you, Kat. So I want to get into a little bit of learning more about the Anti-Police Terror Project. As I recall, you know, you had out of the Oscar Grant movement had co-founded the Onyx Organizing Committee. Um, so can you share what is police terror and how did an ATPT emerge?
Well, I'm only going to answer your question if you say it right. APTP.
What did I say? AT.
Yeah, you said ATPT. But you know, it's my fault. It's my fault. I cursed myself because I fought for that name. I
You
fought.
could have made a cooler acronym for me. You know, I got a
Listen.
gap. It's hard to say these things.
I did. I fought. They wanted to name it something else, and I just was like, no. And now I'm just like, oh Lord, it sounds like a disease.
So the Anti-Police Terror Project. What is police terror and how did the APTP emerge?
So I'll start with what is police terror. So we call it terror because, and this I actually borrow from Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. That when we water down the language of what's happening to us, then we water down the people's will to resist. So it's not gentrification, they're land grabs, they're not prisons or concentration camps, and it's not brutality, it's terror. And the definition of terror, you know, in Webster, and I'm paraphrasing here, but is the use of violence or force in order to uphold a political agenda. And that's exactly what our police force is. They were born out of both the slave trade and the Calvaries. Their job was to, you know, catch, kill, incarcerate Black folks for the purpose of upholding the status quo, which at that time, and one could argue today, was about using black bodies for white profit. And that's still their job, is to uphold the status quo. And it's important when we talk about this that we see when they kill us as being the most egregious, the most extreme version of that terror, right? But we're terrorizing our community every day, living in communities where it feels like you have an occupying army with militarized weapons rolling around. That's a form of terror. For women of color, particularly Black women, the primary way we experience police violence is through sexual assault and rape. When you've got police jacking up brothers or sisters, you know, trying to make $1 on the corner, stealing their product, beating them up and rolling, that's terror. When you're talking about people running in your house with no knock warrants, that's terror. I mean, the list goes on and on, being racially profiled. The fact that all my L's could be straight and I'm gonna get pulled over and I start to sweat and shake and my heart starts to race and right? And because you have no idea whether or not you were going to die. And that is the reaction of every single Black person on the planet when they get pulled over, particularly in this country. And so that's why we call it terror, because it's a constant assault on our minds, our bodies, and our spirits. And then when you think about it, what it's like to be a group of people who every single day, you know, when your child or your husband or your wife or your partner or whomever leaves the house, that one of the things that you're terrified of is that they might accidentally come across law enforcement, but that they legitimately might not make it home. Waking up every day and legitimately feeling like you're hunted, right? Your people are hunted, and it's free. What do you call it? It's a free for all on Black lives. Sounds
Yeah, in
like
the town they used to refer to that as open season.
open season. That's actually what I was looking for. Thank you. Is open season.
Wow. So for those just tuning in, you listen to Kat Brooks, the co-founder of the Anti-Police Terror Project. You know, over the last few years, I've seen you participate in and organize a lot of different protests. I mean, countless protests and actions in Oakland, throughout the Bay Area. Marches at OPD headquarters, the sheriff's office, the Black Friday shutdown, where you all shut down the West Oakland BART or the entire BART system, but from West Oakland. I even saw a photo of you in Alameda with a brother in a Santa suit. So before we discuss the recent, protests and murders, I'm interested in just understanding what direct action is, and if there's different types of protests. Like for those who are watching it, what are some of the different things they may be seeing with these different protests in the street?
I mean, I think the first thing that people need to understand is that direct action is a tactic, not a strategy, right? So it's a form of escalation in a longer term campaign. I think for a minute there, folks were like DA happy, just keep shutting shit down, and eventually we're going to get what we want. But it's a powerful tactic and it's an important tactic, but it's definitely not strategy. And so you mentioned the West Oakland BART shutdown, which for people who don't know, that was Community Ready Corps, Blackout Collective, APTP, Black Lives Matter Bay Area. And see, I'm afraid I'm gonna forget somebody, and then someone's gonna send me an email and cuss me out. But it was a collective, and we shut down the West Oakland BART station on Black Friday, um, the busiest shopping day of the year. And our intention was to hold the space for the amount of time that they left Mike Brown's body in the street, which was 4 hours and I think 28 minutes or something like that. But that was, that we didn't come out the gate doing that. That was, it made sense as part of a strategy that was taking place across the nation within the longer term campaign justice for Mike Brown. So that's an example of DA and how it's supposed to be used. What was the other part of your question?
So I think like there are instances where you'll see something like that, direct action targeting BART, or even the recent F Your Curfew protests, where it was in response to something. Yeah, I'm gonna say F asterisk CK your curfew, but that may be different from when people just kind of walk on the freeway. And so not knocking freeway walking or blocking, but just for people to understand that, just understand what are people doing, because there's some folks who are like, well, protesting don't do anything. And so that question is kind of in response to that, but then also just understanding some of the different ways that people may choose to demonstrate.
Yeah, I mean, there's a wide variety of options that people have based on who your target is and what makes sense to me. The vigils that we have after cops murder people, that's it's not direct action, but that's a form of protest. It's a healing protest, but it's a form of protest. When folks chose to occupy the front lawn outside of the city hall during Occupy, that was a form of protest. It took the pain of the people directly to the entity that had the ability to ease the pain of the people.
Yeah.
And for people to say that protests don't do anything, I will refer us back to the F Your Curfew protest. That effectively ended the curfew. I mean, literally the next day the curfew was done. Right? Nobody went to jail that night. People were in the streets dancing, doing their thing all night. Nobody went to jail because we had ended the curfew, and because it was a statement to authority of what we were able to do. We brought 8,000 people in the streets in 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
In 24 hours. Or I'll point to the defund OPD campaign. We've been working on that campaign for 5 years. For 5 years, been working on that campaign, and we haven't. The most mass actions that you've seen around it are recently. So we did things like joined coalitions that wanted to impact the city budget. We've lobbied people. We've done graphics. We've done community education, popular education, different comm strategies, speaking at city council meetings, right? And it just increases. And so there's different ways to protest, but organizing and protest is the only way we ever get from A to B, let alone all the way to Z.
Okay. And so with all the mass protests that have been happening in the last few weeks, I mean, not just in Minneapolis or Atlanta or Oakland, but it's around the country and all the way around the globe. And there's been a lot of focus on looting and rioting. I'm interested, considering your background in journalism, what do you think about the media coverage?
it's a teensy tiny bit less annoying than it was the last time. Um, I feel like, first of all, they're not riots, they're rebellions or uprisings. And I heard I was interviewing Brendan Woods, the Alameda County DA, on my show this morning, and I was asking him about the cases that they were seeing come through the DA's office in relation to the protests. And a lot of the cases that they're getting are people that were in the stores the next day, right?
Wow.
And poor people trying to find something to sell, to eat, or food, or something. These are the next day. So we're not even talking about night of. We're talking about the next day. But that said, and it's funny. I remember when this was going on in Ferguson. I was on some